Well, hello, everybody. Hello, Bettina. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks.
Good.
I'm looking well. I think we have a kind of similar weeks ahead. I play on two competitive baseball teams, and we're into our playoffs and well into the playoffs. So now there's only a few teams left in both leagues, and
Ooh.
games are coming fast and furious, and it feels great. I got a game tonight, and I got two games tonight actually, and I can only make one of them, and pitching in them, and it just gives me so much life and so much excitement for when you have that thing or three that you love doing and you do it recreationally or extracurricularly curricularly. um, uh, how nice it is that when when you have like the time comes to like put on a performance that matters. At least, of course, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it matters to you because it's something that you love doing, it's something you love performing in. And I know that you have your play coming up in a week,
Hmm.
and there seems to be, we're late starting the show because there seems to be so much energy and excitement for life when you get to do these things and express yourself in a way that you feel really, really competent, and that you really quite enjoy doing under pressure.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a huge difference from where I was at, last week and a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's just a really good illustration of how life goes. You know,
yeah,
it's not about doing this work and then suddenly, everything's rainbows and roses. It's very much life doesn't change, and your function and how you go about life, the things that you do, the logistics of life don't change, the emotions that come and go don't change, but what has changed is your perspective on it. um, if I had felt the way I did the past couple of weeks 10 years ago, I would have been a total disaster, and I would have buried myself in it and dwelled on it, and probably gotten lost in it and never really come through it. And the change in perspective and the change in how to deal with those things is the important change in life. It's not oh, I'm just going to think happy thoughts and light and love and all those things. It's all very well and good. But if that's not really authentic or what is going on, it's not going to change that. And I think that's a really important point to note, because I think a lot of people go into this believing that, life is going to be just peachy keen, and there's never ever going to be any sadness or anger or anxiety or whatever it is again. And that's really not the truth.
yeah,
It's all how you face it and how you see it.
yeah. Yeah, I love the expression. We, as humans, are one of our biggest fallacies is that we try to make permanent what is so obviously temporary. And no matter how many times we go through the cycle of feeling down, of feeling depressed, of feeling anxious, and then feeling excited, feeling energized, feeling creative, how many times that has happened in your in a life, whether you're 60 years old or you're 40 or you're 30, it's happened like hundreds of times, hundreds, like hundreds plural, easily, where you've gone through we go through these cycles. And it's so important for us to remember when we deal with ourselves and when we deal with others that this will pass, and there'll be a reciprocal upswing, and sometimes it's difficult to get at. And I like what we brought up here because we're both really feeling really energetic about our lives right now, or this week, which could be different last week, could be different in the week ahead, but we're feeling it right now. And for me, one of my first, like my biggest first teacher was Tony Robbins. His book was the one that changed the direction of my life. And then I read everything that he had, and I illegally pirated. I'm sorry for all the things I could. All of his.
Hear that, Tony?
That's right. That's right. I owe him about $4,000 in materials I stole off the internet. And in the early days of the internet too, those early file sharing sites, I tried to get
Mm.
anything I could. And but a couple of the things that he said in relation to what we're talking about here today, that are some of the things that I resisted a lot when I first read them. Some of the stuff he said just made so much sense to me, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so true! I never had words for it. That's amazing. I'll know how to mentally hold this concept from this point forward." But two of them are that you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than feel yourself into acting. And as a feeler myself, I didn't want to hear that. I was like, oh, well, I just want to like kind of watch football on the couch and then say I'll go for a run afterwards. That'll work, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, actually, three things. Actually, I gotta make sure I get the third one here. Oh yeah. Um, the second one is that, yeah, all great shifts happen as a change of perspective. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. You know, at the time I was angry, I was upset at the situation in my home and in my personal life and so on. And I was like, I'm not just going to change my perspective and it's going to make everything better. Like that's ridiculous. That's stupid, you know. And I resisted that for a long time. And here I am now, like 21 years later. And uh, gratitude and perspective shifting is like one of my greatest tools I have to feel good all like nearly all the time. It's like it's such one of my most reliable tools is gratitude and perspective shifting. Looking at something in a new way. Look, how can I look at this in a way that energizes me? How can I look at this in a way that puts me into creative energy so that I can create a new situation, or so that at least I can begin to create a new situation for myself, a new reality. And then finally, the third one that just comes out of my head that I resisted a lot, that really um, is appropriate for where we're at today, is never leave the sight of setting a goal without taking at least one step towards its completion, or one step in the direction of that goal. And you know, I know that you've talked about some things about your alteration business we were talking about before getting on, and yeah, just taking that one step, it kind of goes hand in hand with acting yourself into feeling. Works a lot better than feeling yourself into acting. And you know, I mean, some of those pearls are some of the things that are like most foundational to my life and the things that I rely on, and they've never let me down.
Yeah. It's funny that the things you resist the most are the ones that end up being
Yeah,
the most valuable to you, right?
you're so
But
right about that.
I think for me, the first thing that um, one of the first things that my life coach told me was, this person that's causing you so much aggravation is a gift to you. And I was like, what are you, crazy? It's like, no.
They're the
But
enemy.
that was yeah, in the end, that was the shift in perception that I needed in order to see how valuable that person was to me in teaching me things about myself that I needed to look at and to be really honest about, and to shift and to help that in that change of perception as well. And so, yeah, I think the things we resist, uh, those sort of little lessons that we resist can be the most valuable, because you know, if we're really resisting them, it probably means that they are going to one day be very valuable to us as far as our growth.
That's really well put. That's really well put.
Mm.
I hadn't said that in my head like the way you just said it. And boy, if I, you know, 'cause you always have those fantasies of like, I could go back and tell myself one thing when I was 8 years old, or when I was 17, or when I was 26,
Yeah.
what would it be? And it'd be like that's definitely a candidate. The things that you're resisting most, like that are in books that, you know, people who are, you know, much more educated and much more in the space of something that you're moving in the direction of, they're saying. And if you resist it, it probably means because you have a lot to learn in that area.
Yeah. If you're slamming the book closed and throwing it across the room, better check yourself.
Yeah.
Was it check yourself before you wreck yourself or something?
Eggs. Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, most of us don't.
Oh.
I certainly have wrecked myself a few times.
Oh, me too. And you know what? That's the thing, is that, and we will continue to do so
Yes.
throughout the rest of our lives, because that's what it means to be human. And there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is well, yeah, and I can't even say that. I was going to say what's wrong is that you never look at it. But you know what? Some people, that's their destiny in life, is to just sort of stumble through and never look at anything. And who am I to say that's wrong for them? But for me, it's wrong if I'm not, you know, it's not something I want to do anymore. I'm on that path now, and I don't want to ignore the things that I know are going to show me the most intimate things about myself that I don't necessarily want to look at. And oh my God, like, I mean, you know, just being able to do that is the difference between how I was, a week and a half ago and how I am today. I mean, that's the thing that has really um, been such a great benefit to me. And so I know what the benefit is. So I definitely don't want to get stuck in those places. But I'm going to go to those places. I'm just not going to stay stuck in them anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to try and shift into that space of loving presence, and try to deal with situations from a loving presence standpoint, as opposed to letting the ego run amok.
Yeah. Letting the ego run amok. Yeah. Calling out the ego. That's a huge one too.
Yeah.
Um, I remember I remember all the times when you were running the group, which is how we met, and I, you know, every week for years, it was the same kind of thing when it would be a group dynamic, and somebody would say something and say, "Well, this person's treating me poorly, or they're putting stress on me, or they're causing me to feel these things." And the amount of times that it was call out the ego, are they really doing that, or is that how you're interpreting it? That's
Yeah.
it's so classic when once you've seen it, and then for anybody who hasn't done group therapy, I think it's so valuable. Like, I don't think you grow any faster than when you go to group therapy, and maybe one-on-one. I mean, you can work specific and you can work deep, but the amount of lessons that you can learn and the amount of things that you can catch other people doing that you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that great observer's benefit of not having to out your own stuff, but in your head that you do the same thing. It just looks different. Like, it might be the different circumstances, but that person's problem with their uncle is the same problem I have with my father, and that person's problem with their kids
Yeah.
is the same problem I'm having with my employees. Um, and it's a wonderful experience. And I want to go back to something that you said about finding, or looking at it as a way for me to know myself. And isn't that something that we all want to connect with others as a human beings, but we also want to connect with ourselves. And that's the reason why people, when they're 22, go to Europe to go try to find themselves
Find
or something.
themselves. Yeah.
you know and while solo vacationing, it can be a tremendous tool for that. Yeah, knowing yourself. This is the process by which you know yourself. It isn't just a week and a half trip somewhere in the world. It's a constant, ever going process, and the benefits of actually looking at it give you so much power in life. And for me, it gives me a sense of living a life well lived. I mean, I'm stuck here. I guess I could end it if I wanted to, but I don't really have a choice about a whole lot as far as being on this, hurtling rock through outer space with all these other crazy people. And I have to make the best of it. And what is it to inhabitate this meat suit I have?
Meat suit. I like that.
and and why do I have thoughts that nobody else can hear, and why I assume they have thoughts that I can't hear? And it's just this crazy puzzle, and
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I think if you have a youthful, if you want to have a youthful spirit and a heart and mindset, it's a fun puzzle. It's a fun challenge. It's the greatest Sudoku there is.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I like when you said, "Oh, I could end it if I wanted to," but I, I'd be afraid I'd miss, like, I find it so interesting,
I know.
whereas before I was a pain in the butt. But
Yeah.
now I find life so interesting. I find people so interesting. Like, just, well, you and I are such observers anyway. So, people watching in or observing is something that interests us. But I just find life in itself so interesting. Why do I want to leave that part of it? I mean, that's and that's kind of the direction you want to go in, is to take out the judgment and just find it really interesting,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know and just it's interesting because the group I belong to with Holly Holden, that Holly Holden runs for A Course in Miracles, she was talking the other day about, when her kids come and ask her something, and when they do, she tries really hard um, not to sort of follow that niggling that says, "Oh, you got to have an answer, you got to have an answer," because as parents, we always want to have the answer for our kids, especially, but like as people, we want to be the one to have the answer for somebody else. But she tries to stop herself and just stay in the wonder of it with her children. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, I wonder. I
Yeah.
wonder why, like if one of my kids or somebody said to me, "Oh, why does so and so have to be so blah blah blah?" and say, "Yeah, I wonder why they have to be like that," instead of saying, "Well, it's because they're a five and they're this and they're that," and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that's where I would go because I'm a five and I want to be the expert about people, about everything, really. And so for me to have answers is like, part of who I am. But her saying that, it really struck a chord with me, as in, yeah, that's a way I can sort of like just step back and not always jump in and be, oh, I know the answer to that. I know I know everything, which I think can be a bit tedious and annoying.
Yeah. And puts a lot of pressure on you. Yeah.
Yeah. But it also reminds me that it's okay to be in the wonder of it and not need to always have answers. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. To actually ask the question, why might they be? And then,
Yeah.
oftentimes we can come up with a pretty compassionate answer pretty quickly, even if we're triggered.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if we stay in the wonder of it, we stop judging,
Yeah.
you know, and we can see it from a clearer perspective, more loving perspective. So
Yeah. And one thing that you said about rather than ignoring it, back now it's like so interesting. And while it still does hurt, you can't get away from the hurt. You can't get away from some of the anxiety. You can't get away from all of it. But now it's so interesting, and it gives you like a lot of power, as opposed to when you ignored it and it was just a pain in the ass. Like life was a pain in the ass. Life was hard. Life was, it was just, fuck, this sucks. And it's not going the way that I want. And I know that myself, especially when I was before 16, when I first came across the books, that I had no interest in knowing myself. I just wanted to figure out why everybody else was so nuts, you know?
well,
But,
because it was
but
all their fault.
it was all their fault. Yeah,
Yeah,
they would
their
just,
fault. I feel like this.
exactly. If they would just be normal, or they wouldn't be so nuts, I wouldn't have to like go and seek out, an answer to it.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
it's
I
funny.
wouldn't have to fix them.
That's right. That's right. I wouldn't have to constantly show them where they're wrong.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
I know.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I was always upset. I was always angry, and I didn't have any power. Whatever the environment threw at me was how I responded, you know. And it's just incredible, the difference when you can understand your own processes, and then understand a lot more of how other people may be working in those moments when they're not acting in a way that you totally love.
Yeah. And I think if you can turn it around and sort of look at yourself and say, okay, so and so's behaving like this, but really, how do I behave when stuff like that happens to me? And
Right.
do I react in an angry way because I want to hurt someone, or is it because I'm feeling hurt and I need some love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we can sort of put ourselves in their shoes. But I mean, when we were kids and we'd say, "Oh, that's not fair," and your parents would say, "Well, life's not fair. Get used to it."
Yeah.
I think that's one of those ideas you kind of want to toss away and say, you're got to look at it from a different perspective instead of just saying life's not fair. That's you get what you ask for. I'm not kidding. It may not look like it, but it is fair, and it's just how you look at things, and it's just how you're able to turn things around and really see, and I mean, there's so many great teachers of that. Holly Holden is fantastic. Like her approach to the Course in Miracles is amazing. Mine's more of a technical kind of approach, but her approach is wow. Like I've really gotten a lot out of that group. Byron Katie, the
Mm.
the work and the turnaround, and really, really seeing a situation for what it is, and yeah, and I'm really loving Jeff Foster because he really immerses and gets you to immerse yourself in the messiness and the of life, and knowing and accepting it and being okay with it and loving yourself through it. So there's lots of really good teachers of those really good foundational skills and tools and stuff for being human, you know, a guide to being human.
Yeah. Yeah, Byron Katie's so great. I mean, I
Yeah,
just love, you know,
I do.
because people go, I mean, and I can see myself in those people again, it's be able to be the observer. It's kind of a group there because you're watching another person do one-on-one with her.
Yeah, you're witnessing, right?
Yeah, and you watch how they bring, like some of them are like, 70 years old or 55 years old, and they've had the same story replaying for like 35 years,
Yeah,
and it grips them, and it grips them so much that they would pay thousands of dollars to go see her, and volunteer to go and have this session with her. Um, it's gripped
yeah,
them that strongly for decades, and her like her simple like four questions, can essentially show them that it's nothing. That while it is massive for them, it's only massive for them. It's only massive in their brain. It's only massive because of what the ego has built it to be. Um, and that question, like, is it true? And they're like, of course it's true. I love when they start,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course it's true. My sister is a bitch. Of
I
course it's
know,
true.
right? And in the end, they're like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I get it." Yeah,
Oh, and like she just keeps
that's so
asking,
great.
like, actually, but yes, but how do you know that's true?
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden they realize, like, it's all made up in their head. It's
yeah,
all made up in their head,
yeah.
and
We all write a
it's
different,
incredible.
I mean, we all write a different story about, any experience at any given time, and um, it's pretty funny
Yeah,
sometimes when we look at it from the other side. It's like, wow, I can't believe I was, going there time after time after time. But yep,
yeah,
I must have needed to.
yeah. And how much I suffered because of that story I kept making.
Yeah,
Yeah, the suffering, the amount of hours spent hurting in the chest, and that tenseness, and that anxiety, and the oh my God, I can't do anything about it. I'm trapped. This situation is just awful, and that perspective shift. And sometimes it takes those tools. Sometimes it takes a Byron Katie to get you to change your perspective and be like, oh my God, what was I doing? I wasted so much time. I wasted so much energy, was stuck for so long, and it wasn't even true.
yeah,
It was only true in that I made it true.
exactly.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching who comes across this video and you haven't seen Byron Katie, my goodness, look her up right away.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff on YouTube, and it's
Yeah.
just like really, really interesting stuff. So,
Yeah. And you'll see yourself in the participants for sure.
yep, I have a few times.
Yeah. Um, well, we just like blasted through that. Yeah.
I
That show.
know.
We had too much energy.
I know. We
We had
did a 30-minute show in 20 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, 22 minutes. I know. We had too much excitement for life,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it'd be fantastic, Bettina, if you'd finish this off on this nice, energetic show with a meditation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's close our eyes. Take a deep breath and breathe deeply into that place within you that knows the truth of who you are, that knows the peace and love and joy of this human experience, of the divine experience, where your heart and your soul and your body meet in this central place of loving presence. And in this place, you can feel safe to feel whatever may be coming up, bubbling to the surface in you. And you don't have to be afraid to push it back down, to go into distraction so that you don't have to face it. You can be loving and accepting of everything that you feel, of the whole human experience. You can sit in this loving presence and find it interesting and be curious and wonder about how it feels, what it is, and just experience the sensations of this emotion or the thoughts or whatever is going on with you. And in this experiencing of it, and in this sitting with it in love, it is given the space that it needs in order to move on. And in this space, all things can be changed. All things can be turned around. Our perception shifted. And loving presence can be unveiled and revealed to us so that we can go into our lives on a daily basis with more loving presence expressing itself out into the world. And when you're ready, wiggle your fingers and your toes and bring yourself back to the world.
Thank you, Adina. Thanks for the encouragement.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you again next.
Have a great week, everyone.